Saraswati flows toward the east. This piece of land is known as Brahmavarta, and it was controlled by Swayambhuva Manu. Text number 2. When the most powerful Indra, the king of heaven, saw this, he considered the fact that King Prithu was going to exceed him in fruitive activities. Thus, Indra could not tolerate the great sacrificial ceremonies performed by King Prithu. Got some jealousy there. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the material world, everyone who comes to enjoy himself or lord it over material nature is envious of others. This envy is also found in the personality of the king of heaven, Indra. As evident from revealed scriptures, Indra was several times envious of many persons. He was especially envious of great fruitive activities and the execution of yoga practices or siddhis. Indeed, he could not tolerate them, and he desired to break them up. He was envious due to fear that those who perform great sacrifices for the execution of mystic yoga might occupy his seat. Since no one in this material world can tolerate another's advancement, everyone in the material world is called Matsara, envious. In the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is therefore said that Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for those who are completely nirmatsara, non-envious. In other words, one who is not free from the contamination of envy cannot advance in Krishna consciousness. In Krishna consciousness, however, if someone excels another person, the devotee who is excelling thinks how fortunate the other person is to be advancing in devotional service. Such non-envy is typical of Vaikuntha. However, when one is envious of his competitor, that is material. The demigods posted in the material world are not exempt from envy. Well, that's unfortunate, but that's why they are posted in the material world. There are no envious people in the spiritual world. They've been purified of that very corrupting concept of enviousness of others. Text number 3. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, is present in everyone's heart as the Supersoul. And he is the proprietor of all planets and the enjoyer of the results of all sacrifices. He was personally present at the sacrifices made by King Prithu. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In this verse, the word saksat is significant. Prithu Maharaja was a Shaktavasha Avatara, incarnation of Lord Vishnu. Actually, Prithu Maharaja was a living entity, but he acquired specific powers from Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu, however, is directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus belongs to the category of Vishnu Tattva. Maharaj Prithu belonged to the Jiva Tattva. The Vishnu Tattva indicates God, whereas the Jiva Tattva indicates the part and parcel of God. When God's part and parcel is especially empowered, he is called Shaktavisha Avatara. Lord Vishnu is herein described as Harir Ishvara. The Lord is so kind that he takes all miserable conditions away from his devotees. Consequently, he is called Hari. He is described as Ishvara because he can do whatever he likes. He is the supreme controller, the supreme Ishvara, the supreme Ishvara, Purushottama, is Lord Krishna. He exhibits his powers as Ishvara, or the supreme controller, when he assures his devotee in Bhagavad Gita 1866, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear. He can immediately make his devotee immune from all the reactions caused by sinful life if the devotee simply surrenders unto him. He is described herein as Sarvatma, meaning that he is present in everyone's heart as the Supersoul. And as such, he is the supreme teacher of everyone. If we are fortunate enough to take lessons given by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, our lives immediately become successful. No one can give better instruction to human society than Lord Krishna. Well, then this is what we're doing right now. We're taking spiritual instruction given by Lord Krishna. And that means that if we're doing it sincerely and with great respect and attention, our lives immediately become successful. So what is the criterion of success? That means that we're preparing ourselves to go back to Godhead. No one can give better instructions to human society than Lord Krishna. Okay, so Lord Krishna is the best person to get instruction from. And he won't teach us how to stay in the material world birth after birth. He'll teach us how to be liberated completely from the cycle of birth and death. Text number 4. When Lord Vishnu appeared in the sacrificial arena, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and all the chief predominating personalities of every planet, as well as their followers, came with him. When he appeared on the scene, the residents of Gandharva Loka, the great sages, and the residents of Apsara Loka all praised him. That would be a very wonderful thing to experience, because there's millions of Gandharva residents and Apsara Loka residents. Okay, text number 5. The Lord was accompanied by the residents of Siddhaloka and Vidyadhara Loka, all the descendants of Diti, and the demons, and the yakshas. He was also accompanied by his chief associates, headed by Sunanda and Nanda. Oh, now this is a big collection of saintly persons and other residents of the material world. Text 6. Great devotees who were always engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as well as the great sages named Kapila, Narada, Dattatreya, and masters of mystic powers, headed by Sanaka Kumara, all attended the great sacrifice with Lord Vishnu. Wow. My dear Vidura, in that great sacrifice, the entire land came to be like the milk producing Kamadhenu. Kamadhenu is a very special cow, and it can give you whatever you desire. Mm. And thus, by performance of yajna, all daily necessities for life were supplied. But now you see, there are some cows that are very, very special. They're called kamadhenus. And by performance of yajna, all daily necessities for life were supplied by these milk-producing kamadhenu cows. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In this verse, the word dharma duga is significant, for it indicates kamadhenu. Kamadhenu is also known as Surabhi. Surabhi cows inhabit the spiritual world, and as stated in Brahma Samhita, Lord Krishna is engaged in tending these cows. Surabhir avipalyantam. One can milk a Surabhi cow as often as one likes, and the cow will deliver as much milk as one requires. Milk, of course, is necessary for the production of so many milk products, especially clarified butter, which is required for the performance of great sacrifices. Unless we are prepared to perform the prescribed sacrifices, our supply of the necessities of life will be checked. In other words, will be held back. Bhagavad Gita confirms that Lord Brahma created human society along with yajna and performance of sacrifice. Yajna means Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and sacrifice means working for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this age, however, it is very difficult to find qualified brahmanas who can perform sacrifices as prescribed in the Vedas. Therefore, it is recommended in Srimad Bhagavatam, Yajnai Sankirtana Parai, that by performing Sankirtana Yajna and by satisfying the Yajna Purusha, Lord Chaitanya, one can derive all the results derived by great sacrifices in the past. King Prithvi and others derived all the necessities of life from the earthly planet by performing great sacrifices. Now, the Sankirtana movement has already been started by the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. People should take advantage of this great Sankirtana Yajna. People should take advantage of this great sacrifice and join in the society's activities. Then there will be no scarcity. If Sankirtan Yajna is performed, there will be no difficulty, not even in industrial enterprises. Therefore, this system should be introduced in all spheres of life: social, political, industrial, commercial, etc. Then everything will run very peacefully and smoothly. Well, that's a very profound statement. People should take advantage of the great sacrifice. What's the great sacrifice? It's chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And now the Sankirtan movement has already been started by the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. People should take advantage of this great sacrifice. See, in other words, you don't have to perform all those complicated sacrifices that people do. They used to do it, and they still do it now. You simply, the only sacrifice that can be performed successfully in this age of Kali is the Hare Krishna mantra. And by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, all other sacrifices and desires are accomplished. And that's why it says people should take advantage of this great sacrifice and join in the society's activities. Then there will be no scarcity. If Sankirtan Yajna is performed, there will be no difficulty, not even in industrial enterprises. Therefore, this system should be introduced in all spheres of life: social, political, industrial, commercial, etc. Then everything will run very peacefully and smoothly. Well, my dear devotees, this is real wisdom. If you want everything to function very nicely in the society, then you have to take up the activities of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and join ISKCON, the only Society for Krishna Consciousness, by the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Then people who take advantage of this great sacrifice and join in the society's activities, there will be no scarcity. If Sankirtan Yajna is performed, there will be no difficulty, not even in industrial enterprises. Therefore, this system should be introduced in all spheres of life: social, political, industrial, commercial, etc. Then everything will run very smoothly. Wow. Well, the great leaders of society today should read this wonderful purport, Canto 4, Chapter 19, verse number 7, and get the hint, get the advice that can lead to complete happiness and have a good life. Just like it says, it is recommended in Srimad Bhagavatam, Yajnai Sankirtana Parai, that by performing Sankirtan Yajna and by satisfying the Yajna Purusha, Lord Chaitanya, one can derive all the results derived by great sacrifices in the past. King Prithu and others derived all the necessities of life from the earthly planet by performing great sacrifices. Now, this Sankirtana movement has already been started by the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. People should take advantage of this great sacrifice and join in the society's activities. Then there will be no scarcity. If Sankirtana Yajna is performed, there will be no difficulty, not even in industrial enterprises. Therefore, this system should be introduced in all spheres of life: social, political, industrial, commercial, etc. Then everything will run very peacefully and smoothly. Now, this is true. This is very, very true, what's being said here. And I have experienced this. I'm sure many other devotees have experienced this. When you're always chanting Hare Krishna and following the regulated principles of Krishna consciousness, then everything will run very peacefully and smoothly. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Ram, Hare Hare. there it is. This is the best wisdom. Just become Krishna conscious, and everything will run very peacefully and smoothly. Text number 8. The flowing rivers supplied all kinds of tastes, sweet, pungent, sour, etc. And very big trees supplied fruit and honey in abundance. The cows, having eaten sufficient green grass, supplied profuse quantities of milk, curd, clarified butter, and similar other necessities. Wow, that is real prosperity. If you want prosperity, uh, then you have to hear this verse, text number 8. Not the fake prosperity of nonsense people who kill cows and eat them. The real prosperity is what was just said now. You have to feed cows sufficient green grass, and then they will give you profuse quantities of milk, curd, clarified butter, and similar other necessities. Report by Srila Prabhupada. If rivers are not polluted and are allowed to flow in their own way, or sometimes allowed to flood the land will become very fertile and able to produce all kinds of vegetables, trees, and plants. Now, why is it saying this? This is a very important point. Nowadays, societies try to control the flow of rivers artificially. And you see, rivers will naturally flood. Why? Because when they flood, sometimes in some periods of time every year, they fertilize the land. But if you have a lot of dikes and a lot of ways to try to control the flow of water, eventually the land will become, let's say, dry. It will not be fertile anymore. Because whenever there's a flood, and it's normal that there should be flooding, then minerals from the upper parts of the mountains and things flow down and fertilize the land, the lowland. And then the land being fertilized by the minerals coming down from the mountains become very fertile and produce tremendous amount of vegetables and desirable things. That's why it says here, if rivers are not polluted and are allowed to flow in their own way, or sometimes allowed to flood the land will become very fertile and able to produce all kinds of vegetables, trees, and plants. So what we see is that, by making all different types of dikes and different ways of trying to control the flows of rivers and stopping them from flooding and so forth, it doesn't really help society. What happens? It stops the natural flow of minerals coming down from the mountains and fertilizing the land. And that will give very fertile soil, and therefore there'll be very great production of fruits and all kinds of opulent things that will be grown for the sustenance of society. So flooding is a natural thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a natural thing of nature, because that nature is bringing down rainwater from the mountains, and with that, the minerals that are coming down from the mountains, and that becomes fertilizer for the lowlands. However, today everybody's trying to control the flow of rivers. Everyone's trying to control everything, and actually, it's a negative attempt uh, to attain prosperity. Uh, Therefore, previously, major, uh, let's say, metropolises were not uh, made on the banks of rivers. Why? Because it's natural for rivers to flood in different times of the year. Uh, but if you build uh, buildings right next to big rivers and try and control the flow of the rivers, now that is an artificial situation, and it will always cause problems in society. It's normal for rivers to overflow. It's very, very normal because it's the way that the land becomes fertilized by the strong rain, and then there's flooding, and that flood is uh, minerals that are coming down from the mountains and fertilizing the land. But nowadays, uh, there are so many different strategies for controlling the flow of rivers and stopping them from flooding. And therefore, there's artificial, let's say, program that is against the well being of the people. Flooding is not a bad thing, it's a good thing because minerals will come down from the mountain and flood and fertilize the land. Then you'll be able to grow a lot of vegetables and fruits and things like that very easily without having artificial, uh, what you would call artificial things to fertilize the land. If you have to bring in artificial things to fertilize the land, not only it gets expensive, but it is troublesome. But if you naturally work with nature and permit nature to flood normally, as it would when there's no hindrance, then the by nature's way, the land becomes fertilized by flooding, and then you don't have to work so hard to bring in fertilizer from outside areas. Nature is doing it for you. So they shouldn't build, uh, let's say, uh, buildings uh, in areas where there's flooding. They should, because those areas should naturally flood and bring fertile soil down from the mountains. And then you can grow very good vegetables, fruits, and trees, and so forth. But nowadays, they build big buildings and all kinds of buildings in flood areas, and uh, it's going against nature. It's natural for rivers to flood once or twice a year. It's a natural program organized by Krishna to fertilize the land by bringing minerals down from the mountains. Okay. Text. I want to read some of this text number 7 again. It says, my dear Vidura, in that great sacrifice, the entire land came to be like the milk producing Kamadenu, and thus, by the performance of yajna, all daily necessities for life were supplied. Now, see, that is real culture. That is real science. That is real life. You perform sacrifices, and then, by Krishna's mercy, the entire land came to be like milk producing Kamadenu, and thus, by the performance of yoga, all daily necessities for life were supplied. Nowadays, artificially, they're trying to uh, have the daily necessities of life. But if we just follow what's being said here, first of all, you should not build cities on the banks of big rivers because those rivers are going to flood. So, in order to stop them artificially from flooding, they build all kinds of edifices to, big banks and things like that, so that they will not flood. But that just makes more problems because it's natural that rivers flood. So no matter how high their flood barriers are built, eventually they'll be uh, broken down by massive flooding, by trying to control the river flows. It's normal that rivers will flood, and by flooding, they bring down, or nature brings down, or Krishna brings down fertile soil from the mountains. And then the land becomes fertile. You don't need to buy fertilizer. So there's so many things that people are doing wrong nowadays. Why? Because they want to artificially control nature, and that is impossible. But for example, when there is a hurricane, now the United States, let's say, has the strongest army in the world. Can that army control a hurricane? No. So there are so many things that are not controllable by human beings. Therefore, we should take a lesson here and not build a big, just like they build these big cities in a floodplain. And then they're shocked that every once in a while there's a gigantic flood and there's tremendous loss of property and tremendous amount of destruction that takes place periodically. Why? Because they build a city in the floodplain. Okay? For example, uh, in India, that happens often because they don't follow any rules and regulations in India. So wherever there's some cheap land, they'll start building buildings, all kinds of big buildings. But those buildings are in the floodplain. So what happens? Periodically, there are massive floods, and there's a lot of destruction of houses and so forth. And people wonder, why is this happening? Well, of course, you build a city in a floodplain, you can expect that it'll be massive flooding every once in a while, every 5 years or 10 years, and it will cause a huge amount of damage. Of course, nobody reads Shastra, nobody listens to good advice.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
Yes, I have. I totally agree with it because I belong to my maternal grandparents' home is on the bank of different river area, basically in eastern part of Odisha, state of India, and river Mahanadi and Vaitarani. These are two different rivers. My mother used to say that earlier time, like every year. pretty much every year there will be flood. A flood comes during the rain season. And even though those people who are very close to the banks of rivers, they would never hesitate to leave that place and go settle down somewhere up, like no, not near lower areas, because they always know that their farming lands will be enriched after every flooding, and they grow a lot more vegetables and fruits, especially that a sand filled that river areas, they give lots of watermelon, and
Ah,
yeah, different vegetables they grow, and then rice paddy fields, they also get a lot of nutrients. They were never dependent on government supplied fertilizers to grow anything. They were all so they would never leave that area, so they're so happy with that. But later on, the government all created different water reservoirs to control the water, how much water should go, so that there will be no flooding. But when they control that flooding part, what happened is it has actually reduced a lot of this vegetable and grain production in all the farming lands.
yes, exactly.
And like I'm so amazed every details is given in Bhagavatam, and this knowledge is completely wiped out. Nobody knows that why the flooding river is essential, also why it happens and how it helps normal people. And now all these people, the farmers, they depend on going to government block, basically,
Fertilizer,
yeah, to
fertilizer.
get fertilizer and at this genetically modified grains.
Seeds.
I'm like seed, basically, yeah, seeds, so that they will grow. But they don't really give that kind of supply anymore.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
eventually, the all these prices has grown up. Like to get one bag of rice also had become more expensive. Vegetable got expensive. They are so cyclically they are connected. All these things are.
Yes, very
I,
good.
I really want to talk to my mother after this class and tell her that this is so true in Bhagavatam. It is written. Thank you,
Well,
Guru
yeah,
Maharaj.
you have to read Canto 4, Chapter 19, verses 6, 7, and 8, and all this is explained. This knowledge was known previously,
Yes, yes.
but people have made up their own speculations, and now they have scarcity. They have difficulty, producing food.
Because the
People,
government thought that they are helping people, yeah, because of this when the flood comes, people suffer, some people suffer, not like they drown or something. The water will always be like waist deep. It gets into their house and backyards, and even coconut trees also, they after the flood water recedes, those backyard who have they're like every almost every household have coconut trees. They produce more coconut after that following years. Like
right?
they will, yeah.
A
But now
coconut is
it's so
one of the
changed.
coconut is one of the three uh, substantive trees that will maintain people even in the most dire situations.
Yes.
When there's a lot of not rain. When there's not rain, there are certain trees that can sustain society, and one of them is the coconut tree. You know, but people just ignore all this stuff. This ancient wisdom is not being followed. Everyone wants modern things, modern, like building big buildings in a floodplain, like New Orleans. They have built big buildings in the floodplain, and it's caused a lot of damage. Previously, like in the 1700s, 1800s, buildings were built on the high levels of New Orleans. But in modern time, they started building all kinds of buildings in the floodplain. And what happened? Well, obviously, there was massive flooding that took place.
There is a recent incident happened in Kerala, Maharaj,
Yeah,
and because the houses were built just below the hill, and there was a river on the upstream, and because of the flooding, all the water came on the night during the night,
Yeah.
and so many people died.
Oh my God.
And the full complete mud came from the hilly areas.
That's because
Mudslide happened, and
the greedy builders
yes,
built houses in the wrong place just to make money
Just-
for them.
yes, yes.
They don't live there. They just build the buildings there, sell them, and then they go away. And then the poor people who are ignorant, they think, oh, we have a very nice house.
Hundreds of people died during that time. Just recently, within 1 year.
Yeah. You see how dangerous it is to not hear Vedic knowledge. Very dangerous. People think they can control nature. No, they can't control nature. If they live in harmony with nature, that's a different thing. But if you try and control nature for lusty desires, then it's going to be a disaster. I'm sorry to hear that. So many people died.
So many people.
Yeah.
And Kerala means the greenery everywhere,
Yeah.
and very nice hilly area and greenery.
Yeah.
And people, so many houses just swept away. People, they could not even find the bodies also.
Well, because the builders are very, demons.
Yeah.
They don't care. They don't care about the people. All they care about is building some buildings and making money. They'll build buildings in a floodplain. That's the dumbest thing you can do. Haribol, we have to learn to exist in harmony with nature, not try and control nature artificially. That won't work. That won't work. Can you, like, the American army is the strongest army in the world, but it can't control a hurricane, right? They just let the hurricane do its work, and then they have to repair everything. They're helpless. So there's going to be hurricanes, there's going to be tsunamis, there's going to be all kinds of flooding. So instead of trying to artificially control nature, they should try and live in harmony with nature. So what did you say? You said that some people will leave their huts and things like that, knowing that there's going to be a flood.
Some people some people did.
Yeah.
They know that something is happening. They escape from there and they save their lives.
Yeah.
And some people stayed there.
Well, anyway, they don't have big buildings. They usually have like mud houses and things like that.
It's not a very big building, but the location where they constructed the houses, the wrong location.
Yeah.
There are so many hills upstream, and the river was there.
Yeah.
And because of the rains and the river flooded, and the water directly came through the mountains, and the mudslide happened.
Yeah.
Everything, not only the water, including mud.
Oh, that's the worst thing.
That's people were swept away in the mud itself.
Yeah, that's terrible.
10 feet of mud.
Oh my God!
It's so dangerous.
You can't stop that.
Very dangerous, and people
buried inside.
Buried in the mud. Yeah.
This happened in New Orleans. In New Orleans, in the 17th, 18th century, they built houses on the high plains, right? But in modern times, they started building in the floodplain, thinking that, well, it's land, so we can build here.
Yeah.
And it was a disaster. It was a disaster. People died, their houses were destroyed and everything, because they built right in the floodplain.
Right. Everyone's involvement was there, Maharaj, including government gave the approvals.
Yes.
And
Yes.
builders who built houses sold to somebody.
Yeah.
And even the normal citizen people also, they know, even knowing that it's a flood area, they still constructed the house.
Yes. Yes.
There's so many things.
Yeah. It's happening in India. It's happening in the United States also. Okay, my dear devotees. Text number 8. The flowing rivers supplied all kinds of tastes, sweet, pungent, sour, etc. And very big trees supplied fruit and honey in abundance. The cows, having eaten sufficient green grass, supplied profuse quantities of milk, curd, clarified butter, and similar other necessities. Now, if you have a cow, the cow will eat, and if you let the cow eat nice green grass, what happens? The cow will produce very nice milk.
Yeah.
Now, when you get that milk, it can produce many different types of wonderful things, such as curd, clarified butter, and similar other necessities of life. You see, you can make hundreds of preparations from milk. So, therefore, and then when the flowing rivers, when rivers are allowed to flow naturally, then they produce all kinds of tastes in nature, sweet, pungent, sour, etc. And very big trees supply fruit and honey in abundance. The cows, having eaten sufficient green grass, supplied profuse quantities of milk, curd, clarified butter, and similar other necessities. And this is very nice knowledge. And this is what people understood in the past. And they lived in harmony with nature, right? You don't have to go to the supermarket, right? You have a flood, and the flood brings down all this fertile land from the mountains. And then you plant in that floodplain, and it gives you very good vegetables and everything, right? But you shouldn't build your homes in the floodplain. So in the purport, it says, if rivers are not polluted and are allowed to flow in their own way, now rivers are going to change the way they flow. See, of course, nowadays they try and control the river to only flow in one way. But if you let the rivers flow in a natural way, and of course you can't build buildings in that area, and then it produces very fertile land because it's bringing down fertile minerals from the mountains, and everything will be very, let's say, opulent. Nature will be opulent, not that you have opulent buildings and skyscrapers, but nature will be opulent and people will have everything they need. So if rivers are not polluted and are allowed to flow in their own way, or sometimes allowed to flood the land will become very fertile. So you're going to allow the river to flood, right? Will become very, so that way you don't have to buy fertilizer, because farmers understand that it's normal that the land be flooded sometimes, some periods in the year, and therefore they don't have to buy any fertilizer. You see how artificial things have become. The fertilizer business is huge. They're selling billions of dollars of fertilizer, because they're trying to circumvent and control nature. It doesn't work very well. If rivers are not polluted and are allowed to flow in their own way, or sometimes allowed to flood the land will become very fertile and able to produce all kinds of vegetables, trees, and plants. The word rasa means taste. Actually, all rasas are tastes within the earth. And as soon as seeds are sown in the ground, various trees sprout up to satisfy our different tastes. For instance, sugarcane provides its juices to satisfy our taste for sweetness, and oranges provide their juices to satisfy our taste for a mixture of the sour and the sweet. Similarly, there are pineapples and other fruits. At the same time, there are chilies to satisfy our taste for pungency. Although the earth's ground is the same, different tastes arise due to the different kinds of seeds. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 7.10, Bijam mam sarvabhutanam, I am the original seed of all existences. Therefore, all arrangements are there. And as stated in Ishopanishad, Purnam Idam, complete arrangements for the production of all the necessities of life are made by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. People should therefore learn how to satisfy the Yagya Purusha, Lord Vishnu. Indeed, the living entity's prime business is to satisfy the Lord because the living entity is part and parcel of the Lord. Thus, the whole system is so arranged that the living entity must do his duty as he is constitutionally made. Without doing so, all living entities must suffer. That is the law of nature. The words Taravo Buri Varsamana indicate very luxuriously grown, big-bodied trees. The purpose of these trees was to produce honey and varieties of fruit. In other words, the forest also has its purpose in supplying honey, fruits, and flowers. Unfortunately, in Kali Yuga, due to an absence of yagya, there are many big trees in the forest, but they do not supply sufficient fruits and honey. Thus, everything is dependent on the performance of yagya. The best way to perform yagya in this age is to spread the Sankirtana movement all over the world. Wow. So this is advice to the farmers and to everyone. We must perform Sankirtan in Kali Yuga. It is the only yajna or sacrifice that is possible to perform successfully. All other yajnas will be failures. Text number 9, King Prithu was presented with various gifts from the general populace and predominating deities of all. Oh, wait a minute, I want to say one thing. One year, many years ago, I went to India, and I was near the floodplain of the Ganges, and I visited a farm, right? And that farm, well, it was a village, and in that village, there were really nice people. So I had some kind of sickness, and I wasn't feeling well. So I was a host of in a house of nice people. So the father clapped his hands and told his son to get me a fresh dab, meaning a fresh, what do you call it, a fresh tree fruit. Dab is, what's the name of dab? Dab is coconut, yeah. So the boy climbs up, plant a tree, and brings a fresh coconut and gave it to me. And when I drank that coconut, my very uncomfortable body became normal again, right? And the boy had to climb up the tree and get the coconut, and bring it down. And then the father wanted to talk to me. And when he talked to me, he said, I'm very glad you're here. He said, I'm going to ask a favor from you. I said, what is that? He said, can you help my son go to America and drive a taxi in New York? I said, what? I said, are you crazy? I said, here, you're living in paradise here, right? You have three, what do you call it? 3 times a year you can grow fruits and vegetables and eat them. It's not like 1 time a year. That's 3 times a year. And I said, you're living in a paradise here, and you want your son to go to New York and drive a taxi? You see how people. This is because of television, right? They see things and they think, well, what we have is not good. What they have is good, right? And we can make more money, in America. And they're giving up living in paradise to go and live in high rises and eat artificial foods, and it just doesn't make sense. There was one there was one family that I knew, and the grandfather was like an Iron Man. He was like Superman, right? It's like in his late 90s, and he could work just like anything, right? Even though he was so old. But because his whole life he was just drinking milk from the cows, his own cow, and living a very clean life, growing his own vegetables. He never, ate junk food from the supermarket. But his son was contaminated by modern society in India, and he was eating all kinds of junk food. If you look at the finger food that they have around the cities in India, it's all junk stuff, right? And the boy, when he grew up, he died when he was like in his 40s or 50s, right? He had a heart attack or something. But his father was 95 years old and still was working every day in the farm. He was like an Iron Man, right? Because he never ate junk food. And he always, first he would wake up very early in the morning and he'd go to the temple and do his puja. And then he would go out in the field and work. And then at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock, he'd come back and had nice prasadam of natural food that he grew. And he was living a very, sattvic life. But the son became contaminated by modern society. And he had a heart attack when he was 35, 40 years old. And he died when he was about not even 50, right? The father was in his late 90s and he's still working every day and going into the fields and producing fruits and vegetables and so forth. So you see how society became contaminated by artificial foods and artificial living in India. And now India is terrible. The food in India is terrible. And the living conditions in India are terrible. They live in these high rises. I mean, you go in the big cities now, and people live on the 26th level of the high rise. And if you look out the window, you get dizzy because it's so high. I don't know how they can do that. And it's all concrete, and there's nothing natural, and the food is not natural. It's very terrible. What are you going to say?
It's just scary, Maharaj. In Hyderabad also recently, there are almost 30 floors they're constructing apartments.
Yeah,
It's so scary to see the building height itself.
yeah,
We don't know how people are going to still at the top. And the prices of the houses increases if you go level up and up.
yeah,
If it is very high, top means it's
Yeah.
very high cost.
yeah. You get dizzy when you look out the window.
Yes, yes.
It's so high.
Yeah.
They don't care. They don't care. Yeah.
And they are also, Maharaj, very dangerous in terms of when natural calamities comes like earthquake.
Yeah.
They're very dangerous, like so high-rise buildings.
They can
can
collapse.
And it's very dangerous. And you cannot do anything if you're on like top floors, how you will come down.
It's terrible, isn't it?
So risky, but people are like,
They think it's wonderful. I'm on the 45th level. You get dizzy. You look out the window, you get dizzy. It's so high. Yeah, I didn't like it at all. I didn't like it at all. But everyone's living in these high rises now in India, like Hyderabad. It's like
Yes.
terrible. Okay. All right, I think we're finished. So we'll stop right there and catch up later on today. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. So it says, you do your best and Krishna will do the rest.
You do the best.
And Krishna will do the rest. Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah. So we should follow Krishna's advice. You know. Also, talk very sweet. Your loved one you will meet. If God is your host, you will never be lost. You do your best, and Krishna will do the rest. Hare Krishna. So that's our takeaway today. You do your best, and Krishna will do the rest. Yes. So don't build, you know how horrible it is to live in a high rise in India. I mean, it is so artificial. And so many devotees buy houses. You know, I've visited people and devotees in India. They live in these very high rise, very big buildings. And you look out the window, you get dizzy. And everything is concrete. Everything is concrete. You know. I don't know how they can do it. And you have to drive to get away from the cities, and there's the big cities now. You know. And so you might have to drive like an hour to get away from the city and begin to see greenery. I don't know how they're doing it. And the food is not good either in India. Yeah. India is in big trouble. The food in India is terrible. Everything is fried. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
They love fried food, you know. That's very bad for your health. Okay, my dear devotees, please chant Hare Krishna and be happy and have nice prasadam and nice milk every day from our own cows, not by the cows of the demons, but by our own cows. That's a real delicacy. That's a real blessing. That we have our own cows and we get milk from our own cows. It's amazing. And it's so good. So good. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Another one question.
Yes.
In text number 2, purport.
Yeah.
Towards the end, last 4 or 5 lines.
Yeah.
Text 2. It says, in other words, one who is not free from the contamination of envy cannot advance in Krishna consciousness. So Maharaj, how to practice this? Like
Get free of envy?
Yes. Because it says cannot advance in Krishna.
Yeah.
It can come in any flavor or any subtle way.
Yeah.
And that can stop us to progress in Krishna consciousness. So how to not get stuck into it?
Well, that Prabhupada said also, Krishna consciousness is not for envious people. Krishna consciousness is for people who have purified themselves of lust, anger, greed, enviousness. They're living peacefully and always depending on the mercy of Krishna. So in the verse, Canto 4, chapter 19, verse number 2, it says, in the material world, everyone who comes to enjoy himself or lord it over material nature is envious of others. Well, this envy is also found in the personality of the king of heaven, Indra. As evident from revealed scriptures, Indra was several times envious of many persons. He was especially envious of great fruitive activities and the execution of yoga practices or siddhis. Indeed, he could not tolerate them, and he desired to break them up. He was envious due to fear that those who performed great sacrifices for the execution of mystic yoga might occupy his seat. Since no one in this material world can tolerate another's advancements, everyone in the material world is called Matsara, envious. In the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is therefore said that Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for those who are completely nirmatsara, non-envious. In other words, one who is not free from the contamination of envy cannot advance in Krishna consciousness. In Krishna consciousness, however, if someone excels another person, the devotee who is excelled thinks how fortunate the other person is to be advancing in devotional service. Such non-envy is typical of Vaikuntha. However, when one is envious of his competitor, that is material. The demigods posted in the material world are not exempt from envy. Wow. If the demigods are not exempt from envy, imagine the normal people, how envious they can become. Haribol, all glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Please, dear Lord, help us to control our enviousness and our lustiness and our greediness, and be greedy to engage in devotional service, but not to take away service from other people. You know, a greedy person will deny other people and usurp their life and their happiness and so forth, and artificially try and control everything. You know, well, we don't need controllers. We need people who are full of love and devotion and live peacefully and minimally. So they don't have to steal, they don't have to build high rises, they don't have to be jealous. If you have a few good things in life and you chant Hare Krishna, you're satisfied. You don't need a lot of things, big cars, big houses, big stool, big toilets. You live a very simple life and you chant Hare Krishna, then Krishna will provide everything you need to live peacefully and happily, and you'll go back to God because you'll be able to remember Krishna at the moment of death. But if you're greedy and angry, then you remember only the greedy desires that you have, and you'll have to stay a victim of Maya. It's very dangerous to have lust, anger, and greed. There's 3 doors to hell: lust, anger, and greed. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Lust, anger, and greed. They're the 3 doors to hell. and people are voluntarily going through those doors in the society today. You know, it's like fool's gold. There's some minerals that sort of are shiny like gold, but it's fool's gold. Right? So all these big high-rise buildings and big cars and big this and big that, it's all temporary and it's all illusory. It's not going to solve the real problem of life. Nowadays, they're building big buildings, especially in India. It's really big building. Has it stopped old age, disease, and death? No way. In fact, it might be that it's accelerated old age, disease, and death.
Diseases are increasing like anything.
The what?
Diseases are increasing
Yeah.
because of the contaminated food and air
Yeah.
and water.
Yeah.
It's increasing.
It's terrible, isn't it? God bless us to continue to read Srimad Bhagavatam every day. Haribol, Haribol. So our takeaway today is the hills are full of chemicals, so that when rivers flow down from them, the chemicals spread over the fields to fertilize the four kinds of foodstuffs. These are technically known as charva, those edibles which are chewed, leya, those which are licked up, chusya, those which are swallowed, and peya, those which are drunk. These are different types of foods. Prita Maharaj was greeted by the residents of other planets and their presiding deities. They presented various gifts to the king and acknowledged him as the proper type of king by whose planning and activities everyone thought out that the universe could be happy. Everyone throughout the universe could be happy and prosperous. It is clearly indicated in this verse that the oceans and seas are meant for producing jewels. But in Kali Yuga, the oceans are mainly being utilized for fishing. Sudras and poor men were allowed to fish, but the higher classes, like the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, would gather pearls, jewels, and coral. Although poor men would catch tons of fish, they would not be equal in value to one piece of coral or pearl. In this age, so many factories for the manufacture of fertilizers have been opened, but when the personality of Godhead is pleased by the performance of yagas, the hills automatically produce fertilizing chemicals, which help produce edibles in the fields. Everything is dependent on the people's acceptance of the Vedic principles of sacrifice. Wow. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. That's from Canto 4, text 19, chapter 19, text number 9. This is real knowledge. This is real culture. This is real Krishna consciousness. We should not have an artificial life like the karmis. We should have a natural life, as explained here. It says, in this age, so many factories for the manufacture of fertilizers have been opened. But when the personality of Godhead is pleased by the performance of yagyas, the hills automatically produce fertilizing chemicals, which help produce edibles in the fields. Everything is dependent on the people's acceptance of the Vedic principles of sacrifice. And the only sacrifice that can be performed properly or successfully in Kali Yuga is Harinam Sankirtan. That is the only sacrifice that could be successful in Kali Yuga. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Therefore, we should regularly come together, not only in the morning, but in the afternoon and the evening, and chant Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare
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 Rama,
Hare
Hare Rama, Rama Rama.
Rama, Hare
So we're doing it at least in the morning and the evening. That's good. That's why I started chanting Hare Krishna every evening in the temple.
That's very wonderful, Maharaj.
Hare Bol. Thank you very much.